establishment of Turkey. If they both are in the room saying the same thing, the Middle East is impressed, and this was the case with the Iraqi Kurds. And things have gone very well. Turkey, of course, for a long time had a commercial engagement with northern Iraq to try and bind it in, but was unable to deal with the Kurdishness of the Kurdistan regional government. But I think it has to be admitted that this government has done more than any previous Republican government to reach out to the Kurds and give them that minimum thing, which perhaps is half of the problem, is respect. Mr. Erdogan, for all his bluntness in other matters, he's also blunt in this. He brings singers for a breakfast in Istanbul and says to all of them, you are going to sing each other's languages. Please do this. Please show respect for each other's culture. He says the same thing for theatre, and he's, the films that are coming out in Turkey now are looking at the awful things that happened in the 1990s, the death squads, the village clearances, the near civil war that was going on are now being looked at in Turkish culture, and AKP is getting nearly half of the votes in Kurdish areas as a result. The Kurdish opening is unstructured, and we don't know where it's going exactly. And it makes people in Turkey worried, because any country with a 20% minority that is different ethnically, and it's a democracy, you've got a management problem. But I think that AKP has got ahead of the curve, to the extent now that I suspect that when they're dealing with Syria, for instance, whereas Syria used to be worrying about Turkey and housing, for instance, the PKK leader, now Syria is worried, well, hang on, Turkey's giving these Kurds a voice, what does that mean for Syrian Kurds? Which is an interesting change. I don't think that Turkey wants to take back the Mosul vilayet for two reasons. First of all, the Iraqi Kurds, in my experience, I may be wrong, are more Iraqi than Kurdish. I have colleagues who say that the one thing that the Kurds want is independence. I believe that that is true as a dream, but I don't think that they realistically think that they can make it fly. That can be debated, but I think that if Turkey took in those very highly developed Iraqi Kurds into its own area with their own, it would be explosive, and nobody in Turkey would want to do that. Turkish Kurds and Iraqi Kurds have developed differently, as have Austrian Germans and Bavarian Germans. You can't just say because they're the same ethnic group, they don't automatically want to join up together. The Iraqi Kurds don't even join up with each other. Look at the PUK and KDP.
Hi, Dave Ottaway. From the Woodrow Wilson Center and Washington Post. Hugh, I've been reading quite a bit about the Gulen movement, its impact on both foreign policy and domestic policy. What is your assessment of its role, both at home and abroad at this point?
It is influential. It is seeking to climb the ladder into Turkish power. It operates below the radar by moving its people up the system, and it is very well organized. It acts a bit like a Turkish political party, but without being a Turkish political party. It's very widespread. It has an ideological side and a commercial side, in my view. The ideological side is that they want to make a universal Islam that is what we call here in the West moderate, but is reasonable. It has cultish element for me. I'm not very religious, but I dare say, it's a form of religious organization in one way. But for me, the main reason that it's so popular is, first of all, that it acts as a good organizer of Turkish communities abroad. It provides a framework that the Turkish state is unable to or doesn't want to do. And in the countries, these rather sort of remote countries where Turkish businessmen have found a niche, it has provided a focus by their schools. There are several hundred schools from Mongolia to Southern Africa. These schools are much better than the local schools usually and attract the children of the elite and therefore have a chance of long-term influence for both Turkishness and for Islam. But we should remember that that's not very different from what the United States did in the 19th century with its Protestant schools, like Robert College in Turkey, the American University of Beirut, the American University of Cairo, founded by Protestant missionaries with a secular content, but a kind of moral idea. And I think there's that. But why is it so successful, I think, is in one way the weakness of the Turkish state at the moment. If you are a Turkish businessman and you want to get a contract enforced, it's very hard. It takes 2 years in the courts and you're very unlikely to get your money back. Getting paid in Turkey is hard enough. So what do? You do business with your family, because you got a grip on them somehow in the end, and you do business with people in your group. And your family obviously cannot work in both Mongolia and South Africa, so there is the Gulen network provides a network. That if you're part of that network, contracts, if you don't fulfill a contract, everyone knows. And that's a big problem for you in the future. So you pay up. And it's rather informal, I suspect. But how different is that from Masonic networks or indeed, the clubs of American businessmen abroad? I don't know. But it is a social group as well and social commercial group as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your insights. I'm Alan Kieswetter from the Middle East Institute and CNO Resources. Unlike my good friend Ambassador Mack, I have a little trouble with some of your thesis, and particularly the beginning in which you say you can't blame the AKP for the I guess current policies. I guess this was brought home to me when I was at the U.S. Islamic Forum in Doha 6 weeks ago, and Erdogan spoke, and it was frankly one of the most anti-US, anti-European, vitriolically anti-Israel, anti-Jewish statements I've ever heard. And why can't we hold him responsible for it? It seems like, as the major spokesman for the government, he should be held responsible.
I agree. He's undermining your trust in him. And that is very foolish of Turkey. It's not foolish of Turkey. He's going to pay a price for that. And Turkey knows it. But does that represent everything that's going on in Turkey? I don't think so. Does that represent everything that's going on in AK Party? I'm not sure. There are different strands. And we know that there's a new presidential election in 2012. The future is unclear. But yes, Erdogan has taken that role because he believes it's good for his domestic political profile, it wins support for him, and he likes the adoration of the Arab street. And this is his thing. But does that mean that Turkey is heading to the Middle East? I've tried to argue no. It's Turkey's connections to the Middle East are not speeches in Doha. Turkey's connections to the Middle East are, for instance, another figure for you. Of all the people visiting Turkey, only 10% come from the Middle East. And as I said, most of them are Iranians who are not particularly prone to accepting Turkey as an Islamic leader because of their Shiites and Turkey's Sunni. So, Erdogan is winning support among one constituency, but is that the wise path to the future?